take you here. We're going to go and see so-and-so. You know, it's very much that sort of feeling. But he's her school bus driver, so she should be safe. There would be no reason in her mind for him to be telling her lies.
If a child is abused, the biggest problem, I think, with children is trust. It can destabilise them very significantly. If they've been told they're worthless and told that they enjoyed it and told that they were responsible for it, then they sometimes take the abuser's mindsets on. Because when you're a child and these things are being done to you, if everybody else is ignoring it or doesn't know of it, then the only person that's really defining their reality is the abuser.
And I just keep feeling really cold, and she's waiting for him to stop, and he's not stopping. He just keeps going. The longer this journey goes on, the colder I'm getting, and that's not just because of the weather outside here. That's how I feel with her. She's getting colder, and she just wants to go home now. It's almost like it's not an adventure anymore, it's not fun anymore. And I almost feel like she's trying to ask him, just take me home, you can stop this now. And he's just not listening to her anymore. I just feel this man now has it in his mind. It's almost like he's got his own purpose. But when the bus stops, here, where the bus stops, everything stops. There is a feeling of him pulling over. He does pull over with her on the bus. Some of the abuse takes place in the bus before he gets her back. Before he gets her back to the depot, before he gets her back to the station. But there's somewhere else that they go as well, but the bus is pulled over. I feel like I want to get off the bus now. It's making me really, really anxious, and it feels like you've locked me in here now. I just keep wanting to get away. I just keep wanting to get off the bus, and I want to get away. And I can smell him now. I can smell him on her. And she's so cold, her hands are absolutely freezing. But I get this horrible feeling like I want to just curl up. And he's not letting her go this time. He's not letting her go. He keeps telling her that it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. It's like there's a switch gone off inside him, where before, when he's touched everybody, he's sort of only gone so far, and he's not stopping now. He's not stopping now. She's trying to get him off her. She's trying to get him off her, and he's holding her down, and he's got her here now, and he's holding her here. And I just feel like I'm restricted, and it's cold, and I'm being pushed down now. I'm being pushed down on an aisle. And it feels like metal and ridges of metal on my back. And then it's all dark. It's almost like it's taking time for it to sink in that he's actually killed her. He's just had this rush about him, and all he can think about is what he needs and what he wants. And she's not there anymore. And then he panics, because now he's got to find somewhere to put her.
Moira Anderson disappeared in the winter of 1957 and has never been found. 40 years later, Sandra Brown discovered that her father was the last person to see Moira alive. Reflecting on her father's behaviour throughout her childhood, Sandra believes he had a direct hand in her murder.
It took me a long time to be able to use words like abducted, murdered, raped, paedophile.
Sandra has spent years trying to uncover exactly what happened, despite the understandably hostile reaction of her family.
Some have died saying, I don't know how you could have done this because this was still your own father.
Her story was confirmed when convicted sex offender James Gloghley implicated her father in a paedophile ring.
There was a systematic abuse of children going on.
I don't feel that she was the only young lady that was abused.
Predominantly 3 attackers. She's being murdered and other people are witnessing and help in the way that she's disposed of.
Unfortunately, Moira's body has never been recovered. Can the psychic private eyes find the location of her final resting place? Exhausted after revealing some shocking truths, TJ returns to Coatridge on the bus. But the cameras are quickly turned back on as she suddenly begins to receive further information.
I know that Moira's body has never been found, but I keep being shown her being buried, but I can't see her headstone. And I'm not talking about just being buried in a garden or buried in a woods. I feel that she's showing me that she's buried in a cemetery, but it's not her name on the headstone. I keep being shown Moira in a grave, but it's not her grave, and I don't understand what that means. It feels like either I feel high up, as if I've driven past a graveyard, and there's an empty grave, or there's one ready and it's dug for somebody else. And I keep feeling like I'm in there, but I'm not in a coffin. And then there's earth over me, and then there's like a layer of something else, almost like board or something like that, so you wouldn't notice that that has happened. And then there's another coffin on top because the headstone is not Moira's name. It felt very real, actually. It felt very, very emotional. I literally wanted to get off the bus. I just felt that I'd been put in this space that I couldn't move out of. As mediums and psychics, we have to go through that, where you have to feel. And being a clairsentient, I do go through every feeling. And to me, it just feels like he's just done that exactly to me. Obviously, he hasn't, but that's the emotional feeling that I have. As if I'm an 11-year-old girl and I've just been raped. That's exactly how I'm feeling right now.
Over the years, many people have questioned what my agenda is. My main agenda is the same as Moira's sister, Janet, is to find this child. I mean, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do believe in God. I do believe in a hereafter. You know, if you believe that bit in the Bible that says, you know, about the 99 lambs, but one goes missing, they deserve to be looked for. James Glogley refers to an area of Coatbridge, which is no map. You will find it on no map at all. It's a local name that children use for an adventure area, a play area, if you like, very close to Witchwood Pond. There's a wee burn, and it's called Petari Burn. It got that name because children's feet would be like black, like tar, from playing in it, because the burn ran through the old ironworks, the Gartsherry Ironworks. And Glogley had knowledge of that area as a child, but he does speak of Moira's body being dumped in that area of the Tarry Burn.
Acting on this information, Colin heads to Witchwood Ponds.
I wish I could say that this little girl's body was concealed here. And I certainly feel as though there is at least one child's body concealed here, but I don't sense her. I just don't feel her here. I'm being drawn over to my right. So I feel as though I need to, very strongly, I'm being drawn over to my right.
Sandra drives out to meet Colin to help him with the search.
Hi, Colin.
Hi, Sandra, okay. Oh, nice to see you again.
What is it?
Let's have a little look round, see what we pick up round here. Okay. And I'm being drawn over into this area, this part. I'm getting that feeling of that butcher again. I can't say I feel particularly comfortable here. It's a very uncomfortable feeling.
The water is now beneath this.
This is not where I feel that the final resting place is or the final place of concealment is. And I just get the feeling of more than one bit child being told to come here at certain times or something terrible would happen to them. As I stand here, I feel that Moira was killed in this area. And the feeling I'm getting is that her body may well have even been concealed here for a short period, but it was moved from here. And as I stand here, my mind shows me like a roundabout or a cul-de-sac
and a cemetery.
Like Tony and TJ, Colin feels the body is located in a cemetery near the end of her father's bus route.
Now, where she's buried is like the end of a town or the furthest part of a village, something like on the outskirts.
She's buried in a cemetery, but it's not her name on the headstone.
Tree-lined road, trees either side, but looking very long down like a long avenue.
Colin and Sandra go to the cemetery where he concludes the investigation.
We're standing here now in this area where I felt I wanted to be brought to, which is like what would have been the end of the bus route.
It was, yeah.
Since, and I have seen images or been shown things where I believe that the body of Moira was taken into the cemetery. There was an open grave in preparation for a funeral to take place. I believe that her body was placed in that grave, was covered with a small layer of topsoil, and the following morning a coffin was placed on top of it. And I believe that the reason that Moira's body has never been found is because it lies under a coffin in that cemetery.
Goodness.
And I've sensed that really more or less right from the first moment that we met.
And the area that we've been to,
That is where
she's been there for a short space of time.
That was where her life was ended. But then, for fear of her body being found, I believe that it was moved. But from the beginning of this investigation, I do believe that in this area there was what in this day and age would have been called a paedophile ring operating. I, sadly, over the years have been in the position where I have been asked to do readings for people where people in their 60s and 70s trying to find some peace, trying to find something from someone that had already passed over, that they were sorry for what they had done to them.
Yes.
And this has come up so many times for me over the years in readings, you know, private readings that I've done. I would like to think that maybe this will prompt somebody that was around at the time, that's, you know, now in their latter years, that did know something. I would like to think that this might prompt them to come forward and just to bring a conclusion to this.
Closure for the families involved,
yeah,
definitely.
just to bring some conclusion to this.
The Moira Anderson Foundation is a charity set up to assist children and families affected by sexual abuse.
It's a difficult, complex situation for society to deal with, there's no doubt about that. But what we can do is to try and make sure that children are informed about what constitutes abuse and be prepared to talk about it. You've got to educate children and you've got to educate the parents and educate society at large.
I think in many ways the Moira Anderson Foundation is almost unique. I think that with Sandra's leadership, they've done an absolutely first-class job. Sandra is rightly and very nobly determined that this will come into the public domain.
The week's been quite harrowing in many ways, and it's been hard to go around some of these areas with different people, but I think it's been very worthwhile, and I really feel it has helped us to move on. And who knows, I think the next few months could be very crucial. Even if we never find Moira's remains, this is her legacy here. We've helped over 500 families now. Lots of current children are going to remember who she is, and they will keep themselves safe.
Long time, and yet he was seen to be something of a liability. And I know at this time, he died, other people died, you see, at this time too, similarly connected. It was like housekeeping for those in charge. Let's take this one, this one, this one, this one out.
I'm getting this impression and this feeling that I want to entwine the case of your passing with another passing. a nickname or a name of Buster mean anything to you?
No.
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 Many years ago, there used to be an old black and white movie story called Buster Crabbe. And now I realise is that what he's trying to show me is, I think we need to be looking for an associate of your dad's at the time with the surname of Crabbe.
I feel that there's a connection with 5 children with this man and an involvement of a woman that's foreign.
I'm getting this impression that I need to talk about this word Wilton or Winton.
Doesn't mean anything at the moment.
Okay. Just in front of my face is just like a picture come up of Edward Heath, the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I don't feel that your parents were worried about money at the time, but they did something unusual, out of character, out of keeping, shortly before your father passed.
Yeah.
I wonder whether he had stomach surgery before he passed.
When your father passed over, was there a lot of emphasis or a lot of interest on what the contents of his stomach was?
I don't know full details, but there could possibly have been.
I think he's stalked before he dies. There's mystery in the way that he dies, but it's not a mystery really. She knows that he was killed. And I believe she's aware that he was effectively driven to his own death by people that wanted to see him dead.
I feel your dad's life was taken, but I don't want to call it, like in a conventional sense, I don't want to call it a murder.
In effect, this man has been frightened to death. I was frightened to death.
I get the impression of someone pulling a balaclava or a hood down over their head.
Right.
And all I can see is the eyes. I find that very, very disturbing. There's something very frightening about it.
Absolutely terrified. I was frightened to my wits' end. People came to his home, outside of his home. They broke into his home. There's somebody in the house, somebody in the house.
Could you place the importance of 1:25 in the morning on the day of their passing?
He passed with a heart attack, so I can hear him talking to me now. It's my heart, he keeps saying, it's my heart. There's definitely people outside of the home where he was staying, people that stalked him prior to his passing. And through their actions, I believe that it caused a premature heart attack because of a known heart condition or a weak heart that he had.
I also sensed at the time that there was some deep dissatisfaction with an official certificate. You were told that a coroner's report or an autopsy report was going to say and be worded in a particular way, and then when it was actually released, it didn't quite say what you were told it was going to say.
Yeah.
All right? Okay.
But just because it's a heart attack, it also, for me, feels like a murder because somebody wanted that to happen.
Colin and Tony have made dramatic revelations about Victor Trowell. So was he working for an intelligence agency?
We'd been led to believe by various elder family members that my dad was involved with an intelligence agency during the war, and that work continued after the war. I clearly remember my dad's old secretary telling us that she remembers visits from what she described as a respectable city gentleman coming to visit my father at work, perhaps once, twice a year during the 4 years she was his secretary, and she was never allowed to put an entry into the diary as to why this gentleman had come, but she remembers that my father was nervous before these meetings, and after these meetings were over, which she describes as quite intense meetings, there was a feeling of relief from my dad, and she's got no explanation as to who this person was, only that it was never related to the work he was doing at Reeds. Yes, I know he was our dad, he was a good husband to my mum, he was a personnel officer at Reeds, but I feel there was something more, and I would just like to know.
Spies are spies. They are used to leading a double life. That's what they're good at, that's why they're chosen. So the likelihood that you'll find out whether this man was a spy, I think, is remote.
Coming up, are the psychics right to link Victor with the Secret Service?
I know he's there, and I know he wants to give us the answers.
And Colin hits the ground running when he lands at Biggin Hill Airfield.
So he led this very strange life of no one really knew what he was doing.
The psychic private eyes are investigating the unusual case of Victor Trowell. Victor died suddenly in 1973, aged 46 and in apparent good health. A mystery that has overshadowed the family to this day. In 1946, Victor was stationed in Greece with the British Army, who were leading covert operations against a communist revolt. Was this the start of his double life?
Hearing what Tony said from his reading of my dad's photograph, it just reiterates the fact that I know there's a connection between myself and my dad, and that he's looking over me, and I know he's there.
They broke into his home. There's somebody in the house, somebody in the house.
My sister always remembers the night before my dad died that she got the feeling that there were people in the house, and she got my dad up in the early hours to take her around the house to find out if there was somebody in there. I said, look, there's nobody here. But she still felt that earlier in the evening there had been people in the house. A very strong feeling.
Could you place the importance of 1:25 in the morning on the day of their passing?
1:25 a.m. wasn't the time of my father's passing, but that could well have been the time that my sister heard the noise and the voices in the house.
In effect, this man has been frightened to death. It's my heart, he keeps saying, it's my heart.
I always remember the night before he died, he went for a very long walk. He'd been treated by the doctor for about 2 weeks for a supposed slip disc. And that just seems very, very strange, that from going from a slip disc to dying of a ruptured aorta, which is what apparently is on the death certificate.
Deep dissatisfaction with an official certificate.
We feel that what was on the death certificate wasn't quite what my father died of. Also, the fact that my dad always promised me that he'd made a will and that document was never found. Could that be relevant?
You're not the only one that needs to find some answers in this. I feel that there's 4 of you.
There's myself and my brother and my sister, and also my daughter, who is the one who started all these investigations with the psychics, because she would like to know about her granddad.
And I have a sensation which feels to me like my hands have been scrazed.
And I had a very strange phenomenon a few years ago where I had like blood blisters appear on my hands for no reason.
Just in front of my face is just like a picture come up of Edward Heath, the Prime Minister.
There was the 3-day week and the coal strike were very prominent at the time my dad died.
But I'm getting this impression that I need to talk about this word Wilton or Winton.
The name Wilton and Winton didn't mean anything to me during the reading with Colin, but afterwards we did discover that my father worked with somebody called Jeff Wilton at Reeds.
They did something unusual, out of character, out of keeping, about money shortly before your father passed.
My dad did win about £800 on the football pools, and my mum and dad were always very careful with money, but I remember Dad bought new bikes and he bought a new Cortina car.
They were a person that could be secretive.
My dad was at the local pub and I saw his car there when I was in the village, and I left my umbrella in his car as a mark that I'd seen him there, but he denied the fact that he was at that pub that evening. I'd just like to know why.
He's talking to me of spying, to be a spy.
We've looked into my dad's military record through the War Office and the Foreign Office, and we've almost got a shut door in our face, where they've said that our father wasn't involved in foreign affairs.
Writer Tim Binding is an expert on spying and on England in the post-war years, a time when patriotism, secrecy and fear of the communist threat were national obsessions.
In the 50s and 60s, certainly I think the Cold War was at its height. There was suspicion abounded on both sides, terrified of the nuclear threat. So there was a world of deception and mirrors.
Does a name of Buster Crabbe mean anything to you?
Buster Crabbe was a World War hero called the George Medal for diving and taking mines off ships that the Italian frogmen were laying in Gibraltar. After the war, he was hired by MI5 or MI6 to do various undercover jobs, usually underwater jobs, for the Secret Service. He came to prominence again when he disappeared in April 1956. He was sent by MI5 to look under a warship bringing Khrushchev and Bulganin to the west, to Britain. They wanted to look at the ship. He dived and disappeared. And what happened to him has always been a matter of conjecture.
I felt absolutely blown away that Colin had picked up something like that could have such similarities between what could possibly be the story of my dad.
I think he's a spy. This man had Cold War secrets, that's what I'm thinking.
I think he was a secretive person, but I also feel he had secrets for good reason.
I keep being shown a very slimline, black, brief attaché case.
Yeah. I clearly remember my dad had a slimline, battered, soft leather briefcase that he used to take to work every day. We have a diary of my father's from 1972, the year before he died, and in there is an entry with a large paragraph of shorthand. We cannot work out what this shorthand says, and it would be lovely to know what this entry said. It might hold the key to something.
It's like someone has like opened it up and hastily had to make a note of a time, and I don't. My mind keeps on being filled with 12:30.
During that year, there weren't an awful lot of entries in that diary, just obviously significant ones, and the fact that 12:20 was in there several times seems to be quite significant.
I feel that there's a connection with 5 children with this man and an involvement of a woman that's foreign.
Was there a photograph or a love letter from somebody abroad years ago? Why have I got this strange memory coming into my head? We found an old wallet of my dad's in some of his old personal belongings, and inside the wallet there is a small black and white photograph of a baby, and on the back is written Paddy, 9 months, 1946. We don't know who Paddy is, but the resemblance between Paddy and my older sister Deb as a baby is uncanny. Who was Paddy? I'm supposed to be getting answers here, not more questions.
Someone pulling a balaclava or a hood down, and all I can see is the eyes.
Or did he meet somebody when he went for a walk? Did somebody frighten him? Could somebody have felt that he was at the stage where he could have cracked? Could he have told secrets that he wasn't supposed to tell? Did the powers that be know that? Did they kill him? Did he meet somebody on that Sunday night? Did somebody break into the house? These are the questions we've talked about over the years, and we felt that they were our sort of far-fetched fantasies. But the fact that both Colin and Tony have picked these things up doesn't seem such a far-fetched fantasy after all.
He keeps on showing me Biggin Hill Airport. I don't know why, but I know it's got some significance for him.
Biggin Hill means absolutely nothing to me, but if Colin saw Biggin Hill in his reading and there was something to do with Biggin Hill and my father's mystery, I'd love to know what the connection is.
Fired up by his repeated visions of Biggin Hill and keen to begin the investigation, Colin heads for the legendary Battle of Britain airfield to try and uncover Victor's connections there.
As I'm standing here, the feeling is that I want to look across the airfield to this area over here, very much part of the RAF operation. time, I believe Victor would have known this place. And on my journey up here today, I kept getting this